Okay, so start by introducing yourself, who you are, what you work for, what you do.
My name is Nina Knox, and I co-own a consultancy firm that helps companies that try to utilize emerging technology. So I've been in management consulting for over 20 years globally.
Okay, and how did you end up in the particular field where you are today?
Well, I've been always fascinated by technology because technology drives pretty much everything that we do in our modern life, and I transferred my traditional knowledge into the blockchain crypto ecosystem. It just was a natural shift for me.
Okay. What do you see as the biggest challenge in that field right now?
I think it's a pretty young, industry and field. I think there's a lot of education that is still needed, and I think it will be an era of exploration and making mistakes and failures. But ultimately, I'm very excited about seeing, more solid business models and opportunities for everyone involved.
Great. And how does that tie into tonight's topic with privacy and data protection and blockchain?
People who know me personally and professionally, I always say that there are some timeless, topics and issues when it comes to business and technology. So if you ask me, are those topics new? I would say no. So I just think we have to tackle it with the new modern, perspective. But privacy was always an issue when it came to technology, digital preservation. I just think the how is changing and it brings new challenges and opportunities. But to me, those are timeless topics, and they will continue to haunt us for many, many years and generations to come.
Great. Well, thank you, Nina.
A pleasure.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about you, who you are, who you work for, and what your area of expertise is.
Okay. I'm David Solomonoff. On the announcement here, it says former president of the New York chapter of the Internet Society, which is correct. Okay. Currently, I'm the CEO of a startup called Zoetic Networks, and the primary focus there kind of broadly is addressing issues having to do with positive social impact with the intersection of the virtual and physical. That's the big buzzword. The current project that I'm working on has to do with wireless community networks that would be owned by the users and would allow the users of those networks, in addition to owning the network, to sell or resell bandwidth, storage, compute, and content, including personal information, data as they wish to make it available, as well as I mentioned, like content like art, movies, selfies, open source software, what have you, to be able to do that and move that point where the transaction is taking place, initial transaction place, where the permissions are taking place, being assigned, and that type of thing, to the edge much more. So a decentralized model, open up the silos. We've seen with the internet the move from the Wild West and the techno-utopian promise of the 80s and 90s to back to a very narrow monopolistic kind of model where a small number of tech companies effectively take the similar roles in many respects similar to governments, in some ways more powerful, and they, as the saying goes, control the vertical and the horizontal, and effectively are fairly amoral, or they're looking to monetize the sale of other people's data in any way, shape possible, without a lot of concern about the long-term social or ethical, environmental impact. And so, looking to move the intelligence back to the edge, to the real life experiences of people, have them control.
All right, sounds fascinating. How did you personally end up in such a field like that? Yes.
From nowhere. As a child, read lots of dystopic science fiction. That was probably a factor in it. Philip Dick, one person, who was definitely an influence on my thinking. Accidentally got into an IT capacity and worked for many years at the State University of New York, Downstate Medical Center Research Library, where I was systems administrator there, providing medical information to the faculty, students, and staff there.
Okay.
So it's not educational publishing background, basically, and also a long-time open source software advocate, and very interested in the social, political, ethical issues that come out of technology. So.
Okay. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing us in this area today?
The technology moves along faster than people can give these things consideration to, and there are a couple related issues. There is what we're going to be talking about today, the issue of big data being collected, and of course, part of the discussion here will be preservation, so how do you actually manage that data just so that it is actually useful and can be retained. Then we move into the issues of privacy, and privacy is part of kind of broader social questions. Some people will say it's dead, just get over it, we don't have that anymore. I think that's very wrong. I believe that privacy is precursor to a lot of other important things in a democratic, legalistic, rule of law kind of society. So privacy precedes, in many respects, the freedom to think, what we would call cognitive liberty. So if you don't feel that, if I don't feel comfortable that I can go online and research controversial political viewpoints that maybe I don't agree with, then I'm not going to be, my thinking about political questions, let's just say, is not going to be able to evolve in a certain kind of way. If I'm afraid that because I went to a certain kind of website just to see what the viewpoint was, even if I didn't agree with it, that could be used against me, then that will effectively limit political discourse in a negative way.
Okay.
So that's, I think, what it comes down to.
Thank you, Dave.
All right.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about you, your name, what you do.
Certainly. So I'm Oliver Christie. I'm an AI strategist, and I do research on next generation AI and quantum computing.
Okay, the name of your company?
Is Foxy Machine.
Great. And how did you end up in that type of field?
So I started over 20 years ago with a math background back in the UK. And it was going through the AI winter. So as much as I had the expertise, I didn't have the compute power or the data to actually do much with that. Okay. So from there I went into equity trading, bond trading. Did that for a while. Compute power got better, data got better, and now I'm advising big companies.
Great. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing us today in AI or in tonight's topic?
Oh gosh, I think some is access to data. I think more is asking the right questions. Mm-hmm. If we ask lazy, simple, boring questions, we're not going to get very far. I think there's a lot of scope to do better in what we're asking.
Okay. And any thoughts that you have specifically about privacy, data protection, and this thing called blockchain?
I think privacy is going to be a big deal in the next 5 to 10 years. It's potentially the thing which could stop all progress in this area. Wow. It could stop it dead. We need people to understand privacy, to understand what's happening with their data, to get on board. I'm talking about the average citizen. Yeah. If we don't have that person happy sharing information, well, guess what? We can't do much with it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Oliver.
Thank you.
Ask you the airspeed of an unladen African swallow.
Okay, good.
Catch
Well,
that
it's
reference.
measured as the sun, I don't know, by how the sun rises. Is that how it works back there?
Okay. Let me know when you're ready, Steve. Ready, go. So, hi. So, tell me about yourself, your name, the company you work for, and what
Sure.
you do.
I'm Alan Brody, and I run a series of events for blockchain startups. It's called Blockchain Breakthroughs. We travel around the country and we find startups that are looking to either raise money for a blockchain company or do an ICO, an initial
Okay.
coin offering.
And what in your previous life or previous experience has brought you to that type of position?
Well, so we come to the table as people that have specialized in helping entrepreneurs, especially technology entrepreneurs, shape their stories and find investors. So it's in our interest to find the next big thing and help them identify the trends and help those startups find the right investors and help the right investors understand what looks like a good deal.
Great. Okay. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing you right now?
Well, so what separates the blockchain crypto revolution from the previous technology revolutions that I've experienced, and I've been in this game for more years than I care to number, is that a lot of the impetus and the innovation is coming from overseas.
Oh, okay.
So this is the first time where I've seen ready formed companies, ideas, fundraising, venture funds are coming to us from overseas. They're coming from Asia, or they're coming from Russia, and the big minds and the big ideas and the use cases are predominantly coming from overseas, and that actually should be a wake-up call to us.
One would think, yes. So how does that tie into the topic of tonight's discussion?
Well, okay, so this is very interesting because there are two big things here that I see. One is on the crypto, which gets all the publicity, the crypto coin stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of the developments come from other countries because they don't have stable currency. So you can almost say that the less stable the currency, the more likely they are to be interested in crypto.
Yeah.
Which means there's also funded development. Whereas we love the dollar, we just couldn't imagine anything that would be more solid than the dollar, not realizing the dollar is just a construct.
Yeah.
It happens to be related to our economy, but it's still a construct. So we're behind on that, and we're behind in understanding the abstractions of it. Like where do we go with that? So that's a big barrier for us. And then on the blockchain angle, and we're going to talk about this tonight. In order to make blockchain work, you've got to have some sort of unity of purpose, either in the government or in big institutions, what have you. And so smaller countries, and the big example, of course, is Estonia, have been able to organize around a digitized society organized around blockchain. And it's extraordinary what they've been able to do. We don't have that kind of unity.
Right.
And so seeing how the two forces will play out is going to be like the big drama.
Great, thank you. And that will actually be one of the topics that we're talking about tonight.
Exactly.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay, sure.
Better side.
Okay, ready? So, tell us a little bit about yourself, your name, who you work for, and what you do.
Sure, my name is York Rhodes. I work for Microsoft, and I actually started our blockchain work here at Microsoft in 2015. And I've spent a lot of time in the open source blockchain community, and recently moved into the blockchain engineering team, actually.
Okay. And how about your previous life before that? What brought you
Sure.
to blockchain?
So interestingly, I actually started in computer science many, many years ago out of NYU, and it wasn't actually until 2014 into 2015 and I started sort of looking at cloud technologies and then thinking about just sort of new disruptive technologies, and people started talking about computer science structures that I had studied in college all of a sudden, and it became very curious why that was happening at this point in time, and so I just sort of dug in. But it was a long time ago when I was like dealing with Merkle roots and Merkle trees, and
Okay, great. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing us right now?
in general.
In this, in particular, with respect to blockchains and similar.
I think understanding, like any new disruptive technology, it's just understanding it enough to actually understand the impact. And I think if you look at the percentages of the population that actually has sort of studied it enough so that they can have a strong perspective, either positive or negative, it's a very, very small percentage, and so it's hard to have mass adoption when that's the case.
Okay. And without getting too far ahead of what we're actually going to be discussing in tonight's panel, do you have a few thoughts about blockchain and data protection and privacy?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic because of concerns like GDPR, for example, and the immutability of the data on a public blockchain.
Yep.
Where does the data reside? How does it get replicated from node to node around the world? So there's a lot of interesting challenges with like how we deal with data and data privacy. But there's also a huge number of opportunities around giving consumers control of their data in ways that it's very hard to do today. So there's sort of both ends of the spectrum in terms of how we think about data and data privacy.
Great. Thank you, York.
Thank you.